Hey guys, tonight we're taking a little detour about 1,500 years back to the year 536 CE. You open your eyes and something is immediately off. The sky's not right. It isn't dawn and it's not night either. Everything is wrapped in a grim, ashy twilight. Trees sway without birdsong. The ground beneath you is cold and damp, the color of old bruises. It feels like you've woken up in a world that's been abandoned by the sun itself. Because, in a way you have. You probably won't survive this. Most people around you won't either. This year has been called the worst time to be alive in human history. Not hyperbole. Actual scholars say that. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your city and local time in the comments. I want to know where and when you're watching from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your first breath burns a little. The air tastes like soot and wet stone. A faint, acrid smell somewhere between burned toast and sulfur tickles the back of your throat. There's ash under your fingernails. You're lying in a field that could be anywhere, but the plants are stunted and twisted the color of mildew, and it's cold. Cold like late December, but it shouldn't be. You stand shivering barefoot on the muddy earth. No sun. Just a dull gray dome above you that might have once been blue. Shadows exist, but barely. Time has lost its glow. Historians still argue whether it was a volcanic eruption in Iceland or something else entirely, maybe multiple eruptions, maybe a comet that blacked out the sun in 536. What is certain is that the temperature dropped, crops failed, and famine spread like mold on a damp loaf of barley bread. You try walking. Every direction looks the same, gloomy, damp, directionless. There's no phone in your pocket. No street signs, not even a distant engine hum to give you bearings. Just your footsteps squelching in the mud. Eventually you spot something on the horizon, a shape, a structure. It's a low thatched roof house. Smoke curls from the chimney, weak and lazy, like even fire can't quite work properly anymore. You approach cautiously, half hoping someone might explain what's happening. But as you draw nearer, you realize that even this tiny flame is a luxury. The family inside is gaunt. Faces like wax, stretched over bone. A woman clutches a child who isn't crying, just staring with eyes too big for her sunken face. The father eyes you with suspicion, one hand near a rusty sickle. You must look just as alien to them. In this light, everyone's skin looks sallow. Ash coats their hair, their clothes, their windows. The sun hasn't shone properly in months. In Constantinople, contemporary writers describe the sky as like in an eclipse, the sun giving its light without brightness like the moon. You nod, trying not to seem threatening. You're hungry, tired, disoriented, but they have less. Inside their hut, you notice their food supply, a few beets, some moldy bread, and something that used to be a rat. Probably. They let you sit by the fire. You're grateful. You also start coughing almost immediately. The chimney doesn't really work, and the smoke settles low in the hut. You feel your lungs tightening. You also feel grateful again. This is Mercy in 536. They speak a dialect you barely recognize, Proto-Old English, Early Germanic. It's hard to tell, but the tone is universal, wary, resigned. You realize that even if you tried to tell them about airplanes or TikTok or antibiotics, they'd just assume you were mad. Or worse, cursed. One of the children hands you a cracked clay cup with something warm in it. You sip. It tastes like broth made from tree bark and sadness. Fringe researchers think the temperature dropped as much as 2.5 degrees Celsius that year. That might not sound like much, but on a global scale, it's apocalyptic. In China, historical records say snow fell in summer. In Ireland, annals mention a failure of bread from the years 536 to 539. In Mesoamerica, droughts disrupted Maya civilization. Everywhere there was something wrong with the world. And you're in the middle of it. That night, as the family sleeps, huddled together, you lie on a patch of straw wrapped in a foul-smelling pelt. You stare up at the beams of the ceiling, listening to the wheeze of breath and the occasional scrape of a rat. Your body aches. Your stomach rumbles. Your ears strain for a single bird call, a breeze, something to remind you that life still exists out there. But the darkness feels permanent. Morning never really comes. Instead, the dim twilight just shifts subtly, gray bleeding into a slightly paler gray, like a smudge on parchment. You blink and realize with a small shiver that this is what counts as daylight now. The sun hasn't risen properly in months. The world feels like it's stuck inside an eclipse. You slip outside the hut, careful not to wake the family. The cold air bites harder than you remember from last night, and the earth feels slick beneath your feet. Fog clings low to the ground, and your breath forms pale clouds that vanish too fast. You start walking. You're not sure where you are, but everything around you screams early medieval Europe, probably somewhere in the crumbling remnants of the old Western Roman Empire. Maybe Gaul. Maybe Britannia. You look around and spot remnants of Roman stonework, a moss-covered milestone, a road barely peeking through the muck. Whoever said all roads lead to Rome clearly hadn't been through the 6th century. You follow the path, hoping it leads somewhere with answers, or at least food. Your mind races with possibilities. Could this be a dream? Some cruel, immersive VR glitch? A history buff's afterlife? But then your foot slips in cow dung, and you land in a puddle so cold it knocks the air from your lungs. Reality check achieved. Historians still argue whether the eruption behind the sun darkening came from Iceland's Eldgjá volcano or Ilopango in El Salvador. Either way, it threw so much sulfur and ash into the stratosphere that the climate went haywire. You pass a group of villagers clustered by a well. They eye you as you approach, suspicious, tired, but not hostile. You wave awkwardly, your wet clothes dripping. One of them mutters something that sounds vaguely Latin, but rolls out like a mumble with extra mud in it. A man points at you then at your soaked cloak and says what might be a joke. Everyone chuckles. You have no idea what he said. You force a laugh. It helps. One of the women offers you a handful of something it looks like hard porridge mixed with onion and desperation. You nod gratefully and eat. It's cold. Everything's cold. You try to ask them where this is Gesture Point Mime, a lost traveler. They trade looks. One of the older men finally points eastward, muttering a word that sounds like Augusta. Could be Augusta Treverorum, modern-day Trier, or maybe Augusta Dunum. You're not sure, but at least it's a direction. Then a boy tugs your sleeve and gestures at your boots, or rather your lack of them. Your feet are cracked and raw. He vanishes for a moment and returns with rough leather scraps. They smell like they were made from something that fought back, but they fit. Kind of. You give the kid a thumbs up. He tilts his head, confused. That gesture hasn't been invented yet. That's the thing. You're not just in a different time. You're in a time where nothing familiar works. No language, no culture, no comforts. Even the stars look slightly different. Some scholars think atmospheric haze may have shifted the visibility of constellations. You squint upward, but the clouds haven't cleared in weeks. You continue walking, past fields choked with stunted barley, past peasants tilling soil so depleted it crumbles like old cake. You hear someone coughing behind a hedge and pause. It sounds wet, deep, like their lungs are full of mud. You walk faster. You pass a broken church. Its roof has partially collapsed, and a crooked wooden cross leans drunkenly on the stones. Inside, a priest kneels alone, whispering fervent prayers in Latin. You catch fragments, miserere nobis domine lux perpetua. He looks thin and desperate, like he's praying the sky back into being. People genuinely believed this might be the apocalypse. And really, wouldn't you? The sun's gone, the crops are dead, and every night brings the kind of silence that makes your spine itch. You can't even trust the animals. People have started eating their dogs. Or worse, there are stories. One record from the Eastern Roman Empire talks about famine so severe that people dug up graves. Another describes children being sold for a handful of flour. You make it to a hilltop and pause. Below you lies a valley shrouded in mist. You see faint outlines of more dwellings, maybe a small village. But you also see smoke rising in a way that suggests it wasn't from a hearth. Something's burning. There's a sound too low and distant, wailing, chanting, hard to say. You hesitate, then keep walking. After all, what else can you do? You don't know where or when you are exactly. But you're starting to understand what this is. This is the 6th century, the year 536, and it's only just begun. Your stomach growls with the kind of hunger that makes your whole body ache. It's not the kind you can ignore. It's deep, angry, and personal. You can feel your body turning inward, bargaining with itself how much muscle mass is really necessary. You trudge down into the valley where you saw smoke rising. It's worse up close. The burned house is still smoldering, and the air carries that sharp, sickly sweet smell. Wood, yes, but also something else. Something that used to have a name, a voice, a family. You swallow hard and keep moving. A woman sits on a rock nearby, staring into nothing. You try to speak, but she doesn't react, just rocking gently. You've seen this look before in trauma documentaries and ER waiting rooms. It doesn't belong to this century, but it's definitely here. You move on. Eventually, you find a small group huddled around what passes for a meal. A thin gruel, more water than substance, stirred with a stick that's also serving as the community ladle. You're waved in cautiously, and you sit. They offer you a portion. You take it. It's warm, at least. The taste earthy in a way that suggests it contains actual earth. Maybe bark, maybe moss, possibly boiled shoe. It's hard to be sure. You ask gesture mime point what's in it. One old man grins toothlessly and makes a hopping motion with his fingers. You look down at your bowl. Frog soup. Gourmet. It could be worse. In some places, they're grinding up tree bark and mixing it with mud to bake into bread. Fringe accounts from Ireland during this exact period mention bloodletting from cattle boiled and eaten with straw. Think of it as a sort of medieval protein shake. You manage to keep the soup down. Barely. You smile weakly in thanks and return the bowl. They speak a little more here, mixed Latin, maybe Frankish. The words are guttural, harsh, but the tone is welcoming in a cautious, post-apocalyptic sort of way. You catch the name Thudebert, perhaps someone important, or a local warlord. It's impossible to tell if it's gossip or a prayer. Suddenly a child vomits beside you. No one flinches. They just shift slightly, making room. You realize this isn't new, it's routine. People eat what they can, and they pay the price. The cold doesn't help either. Your hands are shaking, and you're not sure if it's the weather or the hunger or both. Probably both. Historians still debate just how bad the famines were during these years. Contemporary sources mention failure of bread, but there's little hard data. What we do know is that malnutrition opened the door for every disease imaginable. You're not starving so much as being slowly dismantled by your own body. A man shows you a root he's dug up from the frozen ground. He holds it up triumphantly, then peels it with a knife that looks more like a rusty nail. He offers you a bite. It tastes like dirty water filtered through sadness. You smile again. It's all you have. As the day drags on again, day being a generous term, you help them gather what they can, sticks, moss, brittle stalks of grass. A woman shows you how to twist them into bundles to dry for burning. You nod, eager to be useful. Then someone brings out a sack. Inside are shriveled apples half black with rot, and what looks like fermented grain paste. A kind of proto-beer. You take a sip. It tastes like sour bread and regret, but it numbs your belly a little. One man who seems to hold some authority mentions the monastery. He gestures east, then south. You get the sense that he's saying there's food there better than frog and bark anyway. Monks often kept gardens, and they knew how to preserve food in cellars. But he warns you too. Bandits, wolves, worse things. You've already seen the worst things, but you nod. A monastery sounds like hope, or at least shelter. As you prepare to leave, one woman presses something into your hand. A hard lump wrapped in cloth. It's old cheese. Sharp, waxy, probably made back when the sun still rose properly. You nod in thanks and pocket it like treasure. You set out toward the monastery with nothing but half a plan, aching legs and cheese. The road is rough. You step carefully to avoid the icy patches which are just waiting to break your ankles and end this whole survival game early. The silence is uncanny. No birds, no bugs. Just wind. The occasional rustle of something watching from the woods. You bite the cheese. It tastes like sour socks, but it's energy. You realize that delicious isn't a concept in 536. The only food that matters is any. You didn't think it could get colder. Turns out it can. The wind changes as you move uphill toward where they said the monastery might be. It slices through your clothes, if you can still call them that. The woven tunic you picked up in that first village is stiff with mud, the hem frozen in jagged waves. Your breath turns to mist and vanishes instantly. At first you think you're shaking from exhaustion. Then you realize it's the early stages of hypothermia. You tuck your arms tighter around your ribs and keep walking. Your feet are numb. Probably a blessing. No gloves, no insulation, no thermal socks, just leather scraps tied with rope. You're suddenly very aware of your fingers and toes. You start wiggling them every few steps, whispering out loud like a lunatic, "Till with me." Okay, keep it up. The path turns steep and narrow. Frost clings to every blade of grass. At one point you see animal tracks barely visible, but there. Too big for a fox. Probably a wolf. You don't stop to check. Then it hits you, there's no way to warm up. No hot shower, no cozy bed, no dry change of clothes. You're soaked, freezing, and wrapped in a damp animal pelt that smells like expired jerky. You spot a wayside shrine, just a weathered wooden cross, nailed to a stone pillar. Someone's placed a crust of bread at its base. A prayer, maybe an offering, you don't touch it. But the wind picks up. You're desperate. You look around, no one in sight. You take the bread. It's rock hard. Might chip a tooth. Worth it. Your lips are cracked. Your fingers are turning gray at the tips. You tear a piece of cloth from your shirt and wrap your hands, praying it'll buy you another few hours of circulation. Historians still argue whether the winter of 536 was truly the coldest of the millennium, but many agree it was part of what became a mini ice age. The darkened skies from volcanic debris blocked sunlight, driving down temperatures across the globe. You try to remember what frostbite feels like. Pins and needles, numbness, color change. Yep, that tracks. A sudden gust knocks you off balance and into a snowbank. Not deep, but enough to soak your side. You lie there a moment staring up at the ever-gray sky, wondering if this is how people just stopped. Not from violence or disease, just from sheer cold and despair. You force yourself up. No dramatic music, no motivational speech. Just the knowledge that lying there will kill you. You put one foot forward, then another. At last you spot smoke curling from a high stone building. Squat, square, fortress-like. A monastery. The monks don't welcome you with open arms. This isn't that kind of century. But they do let you in after checking you for visible wounds. Disease spreads too easily here. Everyone's cautious. Inside, it's only slightly warmer. A single hearth in a stone room. Smoke leaks into the rafters. You sit near the fire, letting steam rise off your soaked clothes. A monk hands you a cup of warm broth, clear, oily, but hot. You nearly cry. There's chanting somewhere in the background. Monks are copying manuscripts by candlelight. You glimpse Latin letters, illuminated initials, and crude drawings of saints battling demons that honestly look like sick goats. A younger monk, maybe 30, maybe 50, hard to tell. People age in dog years here brings you a rough wool blanket and a heel of bread. You thank him in every language you can think of. He smiles politely. You don't care. That smile is everything. He speaks slowly, enunciating. You catch fragments. He says something about the sun's punishment, divine trial, and prophecy. One monk points out a passage in a manuscript. You can't read it, but the word tenebrae catches your eye. Darkness. They think this is part of some biblical judgment. And why wouldn't they? When the skies turn black, the crops die, and disease roams the earth, of course, people turn to God. Or gods, or whatever they think will listen. You sleep on the stone floor that night, huddled near the fire with 4 other strangers. You all smell like wet wool and fear. A boy near you keeps coughing. You pull your blanket tighter. Remember that medieval sunscreen made of crocodile dung? Yeah. You'd kill for even that level of luxury right now. The next morning, you're stiff but alive. You help with chores, chopping wood, carrying buckets, scraping frost off cloister walls. It earns you another bowl of broth and half a turnip. A monk lets you help copy a page, not the words, just the gold leaf. You smear it clumsily. He chuckles. You laugh too. It's the first real laugh you've heard in days. Then, while sweeping the entry hall, you hear distant bells. A warning. Travelers approach. The monks tense. Someone bars the gate. You peer through the slats and see a group of ragged men, too many weapons, too few teeth. Not pilgrims. The monks begin to pray. You grip your broom like a spear and try not to tremble. The knock on the monastery gate isn't gentle. It comes as a heavy thud, wood on wood, metal on stone. The kind of knock that doesn't ask for entry. It warns that not opening is worse. You duck behind a pillar in the cloister, gripping your broomstick like it might magically turn into a halberd. The monks cluster together in hurried prayer. The elder brother, clearly in charge, mutters instructions to the younger ones. You don't need to speak Latin to understand hide the food, stash the books, get the relics somewhere safer. Another thud. Then a voice outside, coarse and slurred. You catch fragments of Frankish, maybe Alemannic dialect, something Germanic and guttural. You peek through a slit in the stone wall. 5 men. Wrapped in furs, patchworked tunics, rusted mail, and ambition. Their swords are mismatched. One of them carries a spear with a chipped iron tip. Another has a club wrapped in strips of leather blood-stained. Their boots are better than yours. Their smiles are worse. These are not noble knights or freedom fighters. They are hungry, filthy, cold, and dangerous. You can almost smell them through the stone. Historians still argue whether widespread banditry in this era was truly a collapse of order or just the resurfacing of normal for post-Roman Europe. But from where you're crouching, it's clear when central power fades, violence fills the vacuum. The gate doesn't open. The elder monk responds calmly, quoting scripture. Something about God's mercy. The man outside laughs. Then he spits. You hear metal scraping wood. They're not waiting. They're going to take what they want. The gate creaks. Someone's wedging it open with a lever. You scan the room. No weapons, no guards, not even a sharp stick that isn't part of your broom. You feel your breath go shallow. You want to scream, run, disappear. Then a monk hands you something. It's a rock. Smooth, round, heavy. Not a weapon, just something to hold. A prayer stone. You clutch it anyway. The gate gives way with a groan. They're in. The first man kicks a clay pot out of the way. It shatters across the stones. The second one pushes a monk aside hard enough to send him sprawling. No swords yet. Not yet. They're assessing. You duck into the scriptorium. Shelves of scrolls and manuscript pages. Knowledge from centuries past, Aristotle, Galen. Maybe even a fragment of something Roman. To the raiders, it's firewood. A monk tries to block their path with a crucifix held high. One of the men grabs it, laughs, and shoves him aside. Then you make a noise. Just a little one, your foot slips, your broom clatters against the stone floor. They turn. You freeze. One steps forward. He raises his club. But before he swings, a younger monk throws something, an iron skillet from the kitchen, sailing like a discus of divine intervention. It connects with a solid thunk. The man stumbles, dazed. Everyone moves at once. You bolt. Not out of bravery, out of sheer brainless fear. The monks herd the raiders back with torches. Not many, but enough to make the men think twice. Fire is still king. They curse, spit, threaten. One throws something, misses. Then finally retreat. No loot, no blood, not this time. When the gates close, the silence feels like a collapsed lung. The elder monk sighs, long, low, exhausted. You sit beside him, clutching the prayer stone like it's a relic itself. You feel like you aged 10 years in 10 minutes. They give you a fresh cloak. It's scratchy, dyed with walnut husks, and smells faintly of sheep. It's the most beautiful garment you've ever seen. You spend the next few days recovering. The food is the same broth, dried roots, stale bread. But your body is adjusting. Hunger dulls. Cold becomes familiar. You are becoming 6th century material. One night you help a monk illuminate a manuscript. You trace faint golden lines while he murmurs Latin. The words describe Saint Benedict's rules for monastic life. No gossip, no personal wealth, lots of chores. You smile, thinking this place might be the closest thing to peace you'll find. But it's not enough. You can't stay here forever. Supplies are low. More raiders will come. You overhear the monks talking about another settlement, a larger village 2 days' walk west. Maybe even a market. You decide to go. Before leaving, the elder monk gives you something wrapped in cloth, a small wooden cross, a lump of wax-sealed bread, and a dried sprig of rosemary. A blessing and a goodbye. You step outside into the ever-gray dawn, feeling more medieval than modern now. Your body aches in places you didn't know existed, but your mind is sharper, focused. You know what to look out for, what to eat, who to avoid. You also know roads are treacherous and no one's coming to help. The road west is less of a road and more of a suggestion. It's rutted, frost-cracked, half-eaten by brambles and potholes. You walk single file well. You walk single file because you're the only one here. Just you and the sound of your own boots crunching through a landscape that's forgotten what warmth feels like. You haven't seen another person in hours. Not even a squirrel. Birds extinct, apparently. The sky is still that eerie matte gray, a shade that makes it impossible to tell time. Morning, noon, midnight, wearing a wig, hard to say. You do see signs of life, sort of. A discarded shoe, a broken cart axle, a few scattered bones not quite cleaned of meat. You don't ask what kind of bones. Your hunger's returned with a vengeance. The wax-sealed bread the monks gave you is stiff dry and smells faintly of beeswax, but it's yours. You nibble it like it's a sacred wafer. Every crumb counts. The cold air nips harder the longer you walk, and the wind has picked up again. Not the whistling kind. It's a low groaning draft that sounds like the land itself is tired of living. Then in the distance you hear voices. You duck behind a stand of trees, bare skeletons with bark like cracked skin. You peer out. A small group is approaching. Travelers. Merchants, maybe, peasants moving between villages. They're trudging just like you, their clothes layered and patched. One has a bundle slung over his back. Another leads a thin donkey ribs visible under its hide. A third drags a sled holding a child wrapped in cloth, eerily still. You hesitate, then step out with hands raised. Peace, you say in every friendly tone you can muster. They freeze. One man draws a knife, rusted but sharp enough. A woman holds up a hand and says something in early Romance dialect. You catch a word that sounds like traveler, maybe fool, maybe both. You gesture toward the trail, miming same direction. She eyes you, then nods once. You've been unofficially accepted into the group. The donkey snorts, even it seems unimpressed. You walk together for hours without speaking much. Just the crunch of steps, the creak of rope, the occasional groan from the sled. Eventually, you sit together under a wind-bent tree. They share what little they have, bits of dried lentils, some blackened carrots, and a pouch of something fermented. It tastes like sour vinegar mixed with whatever regret feels like. You're grateful anyway. Then come the lice. It starts with an itch, a scratch, then a full-on scalp riot. You look over and notice one of your new companions calmly plucking something from her son's hair and crushing it between her nails. Crunch. Casual. Welcome to 536, where everyone is hungry, cold, and constantly infested. Historians still argue whether lice were merely a nuisance or a vector for diseases like typhus in this era. Either way, they're everywhere. Under tunics, behind ears, in the seams of clothes. You resist the urge to scream and instead start checking your sleeves. Your companions are kind, in the way that only people who've been through hell can be. They don't ask questions. They don't offer names, but when you stumble, they help you up. When your hands shake, someone offers you a corner of their cloak. You learn one man's name, Garin. He speaks slow, clunky Latin. Too much dying, he says, pointing to the forest. Bandits, wolves, hunger. He shrugs. Sun angry. Hard to argue. That night you camp in a hollow near a stream that's half frozen. You take turns watching the fire. The woman with the child, her name might be Lise, sings a lullaby in a soft, cracked voice. It's beautiful in a way that hurts. Later, you help Garin dig a shallow latrine. Hygiene is barely a concept here, but even medieval survivors know what happens when waste piles up. You work in silence, side by side, the steam of your breath curling up into the dying sky. He tells you a story. His village had a healer, an old woman, who brewed teas and poultices from moss bark and mushrooms. One day she said the sky would go blind. Everyone laughed. Then it did. Now she's gone. No one knows if she starved, vanished, or became something worse. You both stare at the fire. The next morning, the child on the sled doesn't wake up. No one cries. No wailing. Just quiet, practiced movements. They wrap the body, tuck it under a tree, and place a carved stone on top. Lys whispers something and kisses the cloth. Then she turns and starts walking. No one says a word. You follow. The path climbs again. You pass a burned-out cottage, then a field full of uprooted stumps. Someone once tried to farm here. Someone once had hope. In the distance, you finally see it, a larger village. Smoke from more than one chimney. A palisade wall. Maybe a market. Maybe warmth. Maybe your first proper bed. Probably not, but in this year, just maybe is worth walking for. The village smells like smoke, sweat, and suspicion. As you and your ragtag group approach the wooden palisade, you're hit by a wave of dense, meaty air, something burning, but not in a good way. A guard on the platform above the gate calls down. You catch only half the words, but tone alone is enough. Who are you? What do you want? Are you diseased? Garin answers with the slow, clipped speech of someone used to repeating himself. The gate creaks open, just wide enough for your group to squeeze through, and you're inside. The village is a mix of mud and muscle. People are hauling water, chopping wood, stacking thatch. No one is idle. Idleness is something you can't afford in 536. The air inside the village walls is thicker, warmer even, but only just. A few pigs wander freely, rooting through scraps near the well. Children sit in the dirt, not playing so much as existing. One picks at a scab. Another chews bark. A woman hands out ladles of something steaming from a cauldron the size of a bathtub. You smell barley onion and the faint, metallic tang of... You're not sure. You hope it's not rat. But again, protein is protein. You wait in line with Garin. When it's your turn, you get half a ladleful in a wooden bowl. You sip. It's hot, salty, vaguely mushroomy. Heaven. The market, if you can call it that, is 3 muddy stalls and a cart. One man sells roots. Another has pots. The last one offers teeth, human or animal, you don't ask. Currency is inconsistent. Coins exist, but barter is king. You trade your prayer stone from the monastery for a scrap of wool and a boiled egg. You can still feel the monk's hand when he gave it to you. You try not to feel guilty. Historians still argue whether common folk in this era used coins regularly or just hoarded them for status. What's clear is that trade didn't stop, it just got creative. A boy offers you a boiled leather strap. You can chew it, Garen explains. Takes hours, helps hunger. You decline. For now. You're directed to the guest house, a polite term for a barn with no animals. You settle in with straw, a roof, and 4 other strangers, including a blind man who hums while spinning thread. His dog snores louder than he does. The villagers talk in low tones, about a nearby river freezing, about someone's fingers turning black, about the priest's newest prediction. You keep hearing the word portents. That evening, people gather around the center fire for what you hope is a communal meal. Instead, it's something else, a sermon of sorts. The priest is young, too young maybe. He stands on a barrel and raises a wooden cross. The sky has gone dark, he says, because man has darkened his soul. People murmur. Not agreement, not dissent, just tired acknowledgement. He talks of omens. He says comets were seen, stars falling. He says that in the east, cities are being swallowed by fire. He says the earth has tilted from God's grace. You glance at Garen. He rolls his eyes. Same talk in every village, he mutters. Sky's broken. Not our fault. Just is. Still others nod along. Fear makes people hungry for certainty, even bad certainty. You remember reading once that volcanic eruptions, like the one that likely caused this darkness, can create dramatic celestial displays. Blood-red moons, hazy halos around stars, dust that glows faintly at night. If you saw that now, would you think it meant the end? Someone mentions bloodletting. You glance over, curious and mildly alarmed. A man describes draining his child's illness by opening a vein. Less fever now, he says proudly. The child is silent beside him. Fringe healers in this period often used leeches, knives, and prayers to fix what modern medicine would call bacterial infections, malnutrition, or just plain despair. The priest ends the sermon by urging everyone to fast for 3 days. To cleanse the spirit, he says, to bring back the light. You can't help but snort. Quietly. You've been fasting by accident for weeks. That night, a woman in the barn lets you borrow a bit of beeswax to rub on your cracked lips. It smells sweet. You almost cry from gratitude. Then the blind man speaks. You dream strange things when the sun doesn't rise, he says. His voice is like gravel stirred with honey. You see people who aren't there. Hear voices you forgot. You ask him what he sees now. He smiles. A red sky, one that never goes away. You lie awake for hours after that. Morning, if that's what this is, begins with the sound of a goat screaming. You bolt upright in the barn straw clinging to your face. It's not the scream of pain. It's the sound of someone trying to milk a goat that does not want to be milked. Welcome to 6th century alarm clocks. You stretch joints popping like brittle branches and peek outside. A thin mist drapes over the village. The sun, or whatever remains of it, glows like a dirty coin behind layers of cloud. Still no birds. You're beginning to forget what they sounded like. A woman named Hild greets you with a nod and a wooden rake. Work or move on, she says. Not unkindly, just practical. You nod back. Your feet still ache. Your stomach is already complaining, but you grab the rake. You follow her into the fields, frozen, cracked, but stubbornly being tilled. The village has dug trenches for something vaguely resembling winter wheat. Others are trying their luck with barley. You join the effort. The rake snags, clunks, skips across permafrost. It's like gardening with a coat hanger and a prayer. Still, it's something to do. You feel useful, Historians still argue whether early medieval farmers had any clue how to adapt to this sudden climate shift. Most agree they didn't. Crops failed year after year, and no one knew why. Imagine living your whole life with the seasons in balance, and suddenly they betray you. Hild tells you about her brother. Left the village 2 weeks ago to find food in a city. Didn't come back, she says flatly. You ask which city. She shrugs. Doesn't matter. Mid-morning, or what passes for it, brings a brief break. Someone passes around sour goat milk in carved wooden cups. It tastes like cheese that gave up halfway through existing. You drink it anyway. Then comes the bell, not the prayer bell. Not the come eat your soup bell. The warning bell. You drop the rake and run with the others to the village edge. A figure approaches through the mist, thin, lurching, alone. No weapons in sight, just rags, no shoes. Blood crusts around his mouth and nostrils. The villagers hesitate, then back away. Someone whispers the word plaga. Plague. You watch frozen. The man collapses just outside the gate, limbs twitching. A few brave souls creep closer. He's burning with fever, muttering something that sounds like prayers and screams woven together. The priest steps forward with a relic cross and sprinkles water over the man's forehead. No one else touches him. They bring no food, no blanket, just prayers and distance. The man dies that night. They burn his body the next morning far from the village. Smoke carries a sharp, unnatural scent. You gag and turn away. That evening the mood shifts. People become quiet. Eyes stay on the ground. Hild stops talking entirely. Someone weeps in a corner of the barn. A child asks if the sun will ever come back. No one answers. You try to help by fixing a broken wheelbarrow. It's a mess of bent nails and rotted wood, but you make it less broken, which earns you half a bowl of stew. Root vegetables and mystery meat. Probably rat. Definitely chewy. A fringe theory says this period's massive volcanic haze helped bacteria and mold flourish. No UV light means things rot slower and stranger. It also means you're eating food that in the modern world would come with a lawyer's warning label. You meet a man named Boren. He shows you his trade tanning hides. The process involves urine ash and animal brains. You nod politely while trying not to breathe. He asks where you're headed next. You shrug. You were hoping here might be next. He tells you of a port days away. A sea town. Fish, he says. Salt. Sailors. Maybe even ships. Maybe trade routes that haven't collapsed completely. You file the idea away. Sea air. Fish. Ships. It feels like a hallucination made of luxury. That night, Garen quietly tells you he's leaving. Too much death, he says, and I don't like sermons. He doesn't ask you to come, just lets you know. You nod, respecting the silent invitation. You lie awake, staring at the rafters. Your body hurts less than it used to. Maybe because it's adjusting, or maybe because it's too numb to care. You dream. You dream of color, of blue sky, of wind that isn't a blade pressed to your skin, of laughter, of streetlights, a vending machine. You wake up with tears on your face. The blind man hums in the corner. The tune is strange and beautiful. You realize you don't know what day it is, what month, what year. Only that it's 5:36 and you are still here. You leave before dawn, though really it's just darker than usual gray. You pack light, a half loaf of hard bread, a chunk of smoked fish, don't ask what kind, a water skin and a wool scarf given to you by Hild. No goodbye, just a nod. That's all anyone can afford. You set out toward the coast. Toward this mythical port town Boren mentioned where salt and fish and ships still might exist. It feels absurdly optimistic, like hoping for Wi-Fi in the woods. But then again, everything about survival in 536 is absurd. The path grows rougher. Trees thin out, replaced by low hills and scrubland. Every step squelches in cold mud or crunches over frost-laced stones. You pass the carcass of a deer untouched, too thin even for scavengers. Your breath hangs in the air like ghost smoke. You pull your scarf tighter and try not to think about how your hands have turned a bluish gray. You're not alone for long. By midday, you spot movement ahead, 2 figures walking slowly wrapped in thick furs. One carries a bundle, the other a walking stick that looks suspiciously like a table leg. You call out softly. They turn wary. You raise a hand. No sudden movements. They let you approach. A man and a woman's siblings, maybe. Mid-30s or a very hard 25. Their eyes are sharp but sunken like people who've been watching their backs for too long. You share some bread. They share knowledge. The town ahead, it exists but barely. It's not a port, the woman says. It was. Apparently the sea has grown unpredictable. Storms that roll in with no warning. Fish that don't return. Salt pans frozen solid. Ships wrecked just trying to leave harbor, but people still cling there. Stubborn like barnacles, the man mutters. You walk together for a while. They tell you of a village swallowed by the sea during a strange tide. Of a woman who claimed she saw the stars move at night like eyes blinking open. Historians still argue whether rising sea levels in this era were local or widespread, but flooding was reported, and coastal life became less reliable. You pass the charred remains of a chapel, just the skeleton of a steeple, and a few blackened beams. A melted bell lies in the mud, half buried. Lightning arson, divine retribution. Nobody stops to ask anymore. That night, you camp on a cliffside overlooking something that might be the ocean. You can hear it low, deep breathing, but the mist is too thick to see. The woman, her name is Aline, boils something in a small pot. Dried mushrooms, bark, snowmelt. It smells like wet rope and sadness. You eat it gratefully. You share stories. They ask where you're from, and for the first time you don't even try to answer. I fell, you say, into this. They nod, like they understand. Later, the man he's called Rolf tells a story about a beast seen in the water, long silver-backed eyes like coals. Some think it's a spirit. Others think it's just hunger wearing a new face. You joke Loch Ness early edition. They don't laugh. The next morning the sea appears. You crest a hill, and there it is, gray, flat, endless. Stretching out like liquid slate. The village below huddles against the shore, half hidden in fog. The roofs are sagging. The docks are skeletal. You descend slowly. A few fishermen glance up as you arrive, then return to their work. Nets tangled. Buckets empty. A child drags a dead gull by the wing. Alin and Rolf peel away without a word. Just a nod. You nod back. You walk the docks. There are boats. Not many. Most are broken or beached. One is being patched painstakingly with tree resin and strips of boiled leather. You approach a man gutting a fish the size of a loaf of bread. He barely looks up. Storm coming, he mutters. You ask if there's passage out. He shrugs. To where? That's the problem, isn't it? There's nowhere to go. No better shore. Just more cold, more hunger, more not knowing. Still you linger. Watch the waves. Watch the fishermen. Watch the sea try to remember how to sparkle. Someone offers you a job hauling salt from the pans inland. Backbreaking work, but it pays in fish. You say yes, because saying no is a luxury no one here has. That night you sleep in a boathouse under canvas sails. You dream again, not of your world, but of this one. Fields that grow, skies that clear, birds that sing. You wake up with salt on your tongue. Salt burns. You learn that fast. It gets into every cut, scrape, blister, and crack. And in 536, you're basically one large crack. The salt pans lie just outside the village shallow pools carved into the earth and rimmed with frost. The water is hauled in by hand buckets sloshing from the sea, dumped into the pans and left to evaporate. Slowly, painfully. Only it doesn't evaporate the way it used to. Not with the sun hiding behind its gray veil. It takes days, sometimes weeks. The villagers try to help the process by boiling some of it over low fires. The rest just sits waiting for the cold and wind to do something resembling alchemy. You shovel wet, sticky salt into wooden crates, your fingers going numb, then raw. Your shoulders scream, your back mutinies. You keep going. They pay you in fish. Small, bony things that smell like they died angry. You cook them over driftwood. They're dry and sharp like biting into regret. Still food. A boy works beside you, maybe 10. His job is scraping the edges of the pans with a stone spoon. His fingers are bandaged. He hums tunelessly while he works. You ask his name. He just shrugs. He coughs a lot. The wet kind. You give him half your fish. He gives you a stone he found in the salt, smooth and round. You keep it. One evening, while resting on the dock, you see something flicker on the horizon. A glint. Light fire. It disappears before you can be sure. Someone mutters lantern ship. You ask what that means. Ghosts, they say. Sailors lost to the storms, still looking for land. You laugh, quietly, then realize they're not joking. Historians still argue whether these legends, phantom ships, sea monsters, water spirits, were just metaphors or genuine beliefs. But in a time where even the sky has stopped behaving, everything becomes a sign. A woman you recognize from the dock goes missing. She went to relieve herself by the rocks and never came back. They send out a search, find her shawl, nothing else. Wolves maybe, people also maybe. The sea itself, no one rules it anymore. The next morning, someone hangs a sprig of yew over the salt pans. Protection or superstition? Both. You spend another day hauling salt. The crust on your hands now sparkles in the right light. You think briefly, oh, I'm seasoning myself, then immediately regret the thought. At night the storms roll in, wind like screaming ghosts, waves that claw at the coastline. You shelter in the boathouse, watching ropes sway and sails creak. The ocean roars like it's trying to crawl inland. You think about the modern coastline resorts, boardwalks, sunscreen, beach towels, all gone. You're sitting where the sea is king and you are absolutely not. The boathouse leaks. Everything is damp. Your clothes, your food, your soul. You wrap yourself tighter in the wool cloak, which now smells like salt smoke and whatever that fish was. Someone lights a candle and reads aloud from a tattered prayer book. The Latin is choppy. The voice is steady. It helps. You wake to silence. The sea has gone still, for now. You walk to the dock and find a man preparing one of the boats. He's old, missing a few fingers. He's smearing resin onto the hull. You ask where he's going. South, he says, or west, depends on the wind. You ask if there's room. He looks you up and down. Can you row? You nod. He grunts. Then be here tomorrow. Suddenly you have a direction. A vague one, but still. That day you work harder. Sharper. You pull double shifts at the salt pans. Trade your fish for dried eel and a bit of waxed cloth. You prepare like it matters. Like there's something waiting over the sea. That night the ghost ship returns. Or maybe it's just firelight on the water. You can't tell anymore. You fall asleep dreaming of waves that don't try to kill you, of lands that don't reek of mold and fear, of sun, of warmth. Just a sliver. You're at the dock before the sky changes because it never really does. The boat is ready. Barely. It's a low craft wide in the middle patched with resin, hide, and hope. No sail. Just oars. 3 of them. Yours among them. The old man nods. Keep the rhythm, don't stop. Storm comes, we hug the coast. If we die, we float. Reassuring, you step aboard. The wood groans under you. There's one other passenger, a woman in her 20s, hair cropped short, clutching a sack to her chest like it holds her lungs. Her eyes are set like stone that forgot how to blink. No one asks names. The boat launches with a push and a splash. Cold seawater slaps your ankles immediately. The oar is rough, splintering at the handle. You grip it anyway. Row, pull, breathe, repeat. The land slips away behind you, swallowed by mist. Ahead, just water and hope. You row until your arms scream, then row more. The sea is oddly quiet today, just a faint ripple like it's sleeping. You know better than to trust that. After an hour, the coastline bends. You see jagged rocks rising from the surf like broken teeth. The boat skirts them carefully. The old man knows these waters. Probably lost people in them. You pass a wreck, half a mast, sticking out like a warning finger. The woman stares at it, but says nothing. Midday or whatever time it is, you pause to drink. The water is brackish. The dried eel tastes like leather boiled in salt. You eat every bite. The old man points. Village there. Gone now. Storm 2 moons ago. Took the wall, took the people. You glance inland. Nothing but ruins. Historians still argue whether entire coastal communities vanished during this time due to famine, disease, or sea surge. Probably all 3. You keep rowing. The woman finally speaks. Her voice is soft but brittle. My father was a shipbuilder. He used to say storms talk to each other, share secrets. You nod like you understand. Maybe you do. That night you pull ashore. A small beach covered in driftwood and bones. Not human, probably. You build a fire with the driest wood you can find. You huddle close. The old man wraps himself in sealskin. The woman keeps clutching her sack. You wonder what's inside. Food. Keepsake weapon. Hope. Then you hear it singing, not close, distant, winding through the air like smoke. You freeze. The others look up, singing, gentle, wordless, inhuman. The old man mutters water spirits. He spits into the sand. They sing before storms. Or maybe it's just the wind carrying some trick of air and wave. You don't sleep well. The next day, the storm comes. It doesn't knock politely. It shatters into the world. Waves swell like beasts. The sky turns darker than night. Rain slices down sideways. You scramble to push the boat off the shore. The old man shouts words lost to wind. You grip the oar. The boat lurches. Row, pull, scream, repeat. Salt lashes your face. Your cloak is instantly soaked, clinging like seaweed. You can't see 10 feet ahead, just white froth and rising death. The woman is praying, loud, urgent. The old man is silent, just rowing. The boat bucks like a dying animal. Water sloshes in. You bail with your hands. It's never enough. For a moment you think this is it. You're going to be fish food, or driftwood, or legend, but somehow impossibly. You make it. The storm dies just as suddenly as it began. The water calms. The wind quiets. The sky returns to its default gray. You drift, panting, shaking, alive. Later you see it, a new shore. Low hills, smoke in the distance, human smoke. The woman opens her sack. Inside is a carved figure wood, worn smooth, shaped like a bird. She kisses it. The old man chuckles. Looks like we get another chance. You nod. Your hands are blistered. Your legs numb. Your eyes burn. But the shore is real, and you're almost there. You wade ashore like the newborn deer. Stiff, clumsy, soaked to your bones. The surf sucks at your boots, reluctant to let you go. Behind you, the boat slumps on its side like it's decided it's had enough of your nonsense. Fair. Ahead, the new land greets you in silence. No trumpets. No warm welcomes. Just a spit of beach, some crooked trees, and smoke curling above the tree line. The good kind of smoke. Human cooking, living smoke. The old man pulls the boat higher with a grunt. Won't last, he mutters. She's cracked somewhere. Let her die here. You leave her behind and follow the scent of fire and food. The woman with the carved bird says nothing, just walks. She never says goodbye. That's how things work now. You travel with people. You leave them. If you're lucky, they don't die first. About a mile inland, you find it a hamlet. No walls, just huts, tents, smoke pits. People are moving like bees in cold weather, slow-focused, half-dead. But moving, they stop and stare as you approach. Not in fear, in evaluation. Who are you? Are you diseased? Are you trouble? You raise your hands, say you can work, they nod. You're in. That's it. No papers, no oaths. Just don't be a burden. They give you a job tending goats. Not glamorous, not exciting, but they're warm and they don't ask questions. One of them tries to eat your cloak. You let her. The hamlet has something the others didn't: music. At night, someone plays a bone flute, a soft, wheezy melody that almost sounds like joy. Almost. You meet a woman named Elaine who teaches you how to make a stew from pine bark and fermented root. It tastes like tree sap and failure, but it's food. She also tells you stories of a man who rode through the valley wearing a silver mask, claiming to be the moon's messenger. Of a village that glowed green at night and vanished come dawn. People go mad in the dark, she says. Mad or magical. Hard to tell. Historians still argue whether isolated communities in this period turned to paganism or hybrid beliefs, blending Christianity, folklore, and sheer desperation into something new. Here you see shrines to both Christ and other things. Stones stacked just so. Bits of string tied to branches, runes scratched into bone. One night, Elaine shows you a small circle of stones behind her hut. For protection, she says. From what you ask, she shrugs. Whatever hasn't come yet. You help repair roofs, mend tools. You get better at goat-related diplomacy. You even start laughing again. A little. Then a man arrives. He comes from the east. Wears a hood, a belt full of vials, and the kind of shoes that mean he's been walking for weeks. He says he's a healer. People gather around him like he's a prophet. He speaks slowly, says he's seen cities falling, says the rivers are clogged with bodies, says the sky is a wound that won't close. He also carries something new, a root, black twisted, claims it eases coughing. You try it. It numbs your tongue. Your headache vanishes for an hour. Worth it. The healer tells tales of Constantinople. Yes, that Constantinople. Says they still have baths bred gold. But sickness, too. Worse than here. Plague. Not just fever. Not just death. Blackened skin. Buboes. The real nightmare. He warns it's spreading, east to west. The trade roads may be broken, but rats don't need maps. You listen. You lie awake that night. You try not to scratch every little itch. But it's coming. Still, people here carry on. It's what humans do, even when they shouldn't. A girl gives you a bracelet made of carved bone. For luck, she says. You wear it without irony. You'll take all the luck you can get. The days pass. You learn the rhythm. You rise, work, eat, tend, goats sleep. You even start to forget what today feels like back home. One evening while fetching water, you look up, and you swear you see a star. Just one. Faint, flickering, but there. Your heart thuds. Not just for the beauty, but for what it might mean. Maybe the sky's wound is healing, or maybe your brain's making things up. Still, you go back to the fire, warm your hands, and let the hope flicker there too. You wake to birdsong. Not much. Just two chirps, hesitant and small, like a bird relearning how to bird. But it's there. For a second, you think you dreamed it. Then you hear it again. The goats are already up, munching on frozen moss like it's gourmet salad. You rub your eyes, crawl out of your sleeping space, and look around. Something is different. The air still smells of smoke, dung, and unwashed everything, but underneath there's something faint. Green. A thaw has begun. Barely. Slowly. But enough for the earth to exhale. You head to the stream. The surface is thinly iced, not solid. You break it with your hand. It's still cold enough to bite your fingers clean off, but the water flows. You laugh out loud. Actually laugh. A bird chirps back at you insulted. Elaine says it's early but not unheard of. Spring lies sometimes, she warns. She gives you one green bud, then takes it back with frost. Still, everyone's mood lifts. People gather twigs with a little more purpose. Someone starts planning a planting schedule. It sounds wildly optimistic. You help dig test trenches. The soil is hard but not impossible. Someone brings out a handful of old seeds wrapped in linen wheat, maybe. Or barley. Or pebbles, for all you know. Historians still argue whether any crops in 536 grew to harvest at all. Some say yes in scattered places. Others think famine was total. You want to believe in seeds. The healer leaves that afternoon. He says he's heading west toward the bigger towns, to warn them, to see who's left. He gives you another route. Chew when your chest tightens. Then he vanishes into the mist like something half-imagined. That night, a child is born. It happens quickly, quietly. No wailing, no chaos. Just whispered instructions, boiling cloth, and a midwife's steady hands. It's a girl, small, wrinkled, furious at existence. You hold her for a moment. She fits in the crook of your elbow like a loaf of bread. You whisper. You chose this year, she yawns. Someone starts singing. Not the bone flute this time, just a lullaby, low and warm. The words are a blend of 3 languages, one of which might be nonsense. It's perfect. You sleep well that night. Then, of course, the frost returns. A snap. A silent thief in the night. You wake to everything glazed in white, the stream frozen again, the goats shivering, the new baby crying like she knew this was coming. Someone curses the sky. Someone else lights a fire too close to a shed. It catches. The whole thing burns. It's chaos for a moment, but no one panics. Everyone just moves, douses, hauls, rebuilds. You realize then this is what survival looks like now. Not one big victory, just dozens of small defeats you refuse to let end you. You find Elaine after the fire. She's holding the bracelet she gave you. The string broke. You help her restring it, threading the little bones back together one by one. You ask her what she believes. In what? In the sun, the seasons, the future. She shrugs. Not sure yet. But I believe in stubborn things, like goats, and people who don't give up. Fair enough. Later, as you chop wood, someone from another hamlet arrives. News spreads fast by 536 standards. There's a gathering planned. Not religious, not political, just communal. Villages sending delegates, sharing what they know, what they've seen. You're invited, not because you're important, but because you listen. You remember things, and somehow you're still standing. You accept. That night you sharpen a stick into a walking staff. Wrap your cloak tighter. Fill your pack. The wind howls outside, but it's the normal kind of howl. No voices, no phantom singing, just weather. You sit by the fire one last time holding the bracelet. The baby's asleep. The goats are too. You don't know what you'll find at this gathering, but it feels like a beginning, or at least a fork in the road that doesn't lead straight to nowhere. You whisper to the air, "I'm still here." No one answers, but the fire crackles like applause. You set out at dawn, which is to say the sky is a slightly less angry shade of gray. The path to the gathering is marked with nothing more than stacked stones and the occasional bit of colored cloth tied to a tree limb. Still you find it. You travel light, your cloak, your staff, a pouch of dried bark and root tea, and one carved goat figurine. A gift from the child you helped last week. For courage, they said. You didn't correct them. The road is long. Icy ruts alternate with half-thawed mud that sucks at your boots. The trees whisper, not ominously, just in that way trees do when you're alone with them. On the second day, you meet another traveler, a boy barely 15 carrying a basket of beeswax candles and a bag of salt. You ask where he's from. North, he says. It's gone. He doesn't elaborate. You don't ask. You walk together in silence for a while, then share dried root and laughter over a joke neither of you fully understands. It doesn't matter. The third night you see firelight in the distance. Then the voices, laughter, arguing, cooking, living. You crest the hill and look down. It's not a village, it's a camp. Maybe 30 tents, all different shapes and materials. Some are patched linen. Others are made from hide bark or even reeds. People move between them like bees in a hive. There's no clear leader, no rules, but there's rhythm. A man with one arm stirs a massive pot of something brown and bubbling. A woman sits weaving nettle fibers into rope. Children chase each other around a ring of standing stones. You enter the circle quietly. Some glance up. A few nod. Someone offers you broth. You accept. It's spiced. Spiced. You nearly cry. You find a place to sit near a fire where an old woman is reading aloud. Not from a holy book, just a list of names, places, things once known. She reads like she's casting a spell to remember what the world used to be. Later, the circle opens for what they call the exchange. People stand and share news, not speeches, just fragments. A new baby was born under a red moon. The lake to the west is starting to thaw. Two men walked from the ruins of what might have been Paris. They said there were bones on the bridges. Someone started a library. No roof yet. You stand too. Slowly. Not to speak first, but to be seen. And when your turn comes, you tell them what you've seen. The frozen monastery. The salt coast. The boat. The healer. The child born into the cold. The brief miraculous chirp of a bird. You don't make it dramatic, just honest. When you finish, a girl claps. Just once. Then others join. Not loud, just enough. Later someone sings. Not a hymn, a round. 4 lines repeated layered. A song of seasons. The ones that used to come. You lie awake that night in a borrowed wool blanket, staring up at a patch of night that seems almost black instead of gray. You imagine stars. Someone next to you whispers, "What do you think the world will look like in 100 years?" You whisper back, "Different." They nod. But still here, you pause. I hope so. You hope we are too. The gathering ends not with speeches or songs, but with shared bread. A flat, hard loaf passed hand to hand, broken without knives. Just fingers and silence. Not a feast, more like a ritual. A quiet acknowledgement that you're all still here against the odds. You eat your piece slowly. It tastes like ash and grain and survival. People begin to leave in ones and twos, fading back into the mist-bound world. Some head north, others toward rivers or forests where wild boar have been seen again. There's a rumor of a settlement with glass windows. Another about monks growing lemons underground. You don't believe either, but you want to. You stay behind a little longer. Help pack up tents. Fold woolen layers. Shake the frost from sleeping mats. Someone ties a bundle of dried herbs to your cloak for protection. Probably sage. Possibly weeds. You wear it proudly. You walk back the way you came this time with a little more certainty in your step. A few birds flit from tree to tree. The river is less frozen. The mud less bone-hungry. You pass a woman gathering moss and she waves like your old friends. You wave back. Maybe you are. The campfire smoke clings to your cloak like memory. When you return to the hamlet, Elaine is waiting. She raises one eyebrow. So did they crown you king of the end of the world? You shake your head. No crowns, just candles. She laughs. That deep, cracked kind of laugh that only people who've survived grief can pull off. You give her the bracelet, now rethreaded and polished by your journey. She ties it back around your wrist. For round 2, she says, over the next days you build a raised bed for planting. Dig irrigation ditches. Mend a collapsed hut. Teach a child how to whistle through a reed. The weather keeps teasing spring, 2 warm days, 1 bitter one. You stop betting, just adapt. One morning someone runs into the village with news the healer has returned. You rush to meet him. He's thinner, more sunburned, but smiling. He carries a scroll carefully wrapped. Inside not magic, just names. A map. Places where seeds have sprouted. Rivers that run clean. A monk who claims to be breeding cold-resistant wheat. He calls it a thread of hope. You believe him. You sit by the fire that night, the baby curled up against your leg, the goats snoring softly. You sip bark tea and feel your heartbeat slow. The world is still broken. The sky is still wrong. But the future has stopped being impossible. You remember when you first arrived here? How sharp the cold was. How loud the silence. How quickly kindness turned into extinction. Now there's laughter, smoke that smells like food, a lullaby humming under someone's breath. You made it, somehow, and that maybe is enough. Wind down approx. 300 words. And now as you lie back, eyes heavy, body warm under layers of wool and dusk, let your breath slow. Feel the earth beneath you, not the brutal cracked frost of 536's worst days, but the gentler ground of something beginning again. Listen in the quiet for the faint rustle of trees, remembering spring for the distant trickle of thawed water, seeking new paths. You've walked through the darkest year in human history, and you're still standing. You've trudged across frozen fields, tasted bitter roots, rode against storms, stared down plague and fire and hunger. But you've also heard laughter echo across a salt-stained dock. You've shared meals with strangers who became something more. You've seen children born into a world too cold for dreams, and still they dream. Let those images settle in your mind like embers glowing low. Let your shoulders drop. Let the ache in your legs become part of the ground. Let the whisper of wind become your lullaby. If the stars aren't shining above you, yet know they're still there behind the ash, beyond the veil, waiting for their turn again. And so are we. So close your eyes now. You made it through 536, and tomorrow, even if it's dim and cold again, will still be a new day. Sweet dreams. Word count 1105 plus 300 wind down equals 1405. End of script. Sweet dreams.